Hi, you're listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction. We're your hosts, Amber and Dan.
Follow us on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Podcast. Please rate our show wherever you're listening, and let's get started. Hey, everybody. We got a good one for you today. What are we talking about?
We are talking about You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to stop trying to come up with something other than, hey, guys, we got a good one for you, because it just feels natural, and it's like 3 seconds of time.
It's your catchphrase.
Yeah, there you go. We got a gimmick now. So tell me about this, how we got to reading this book, because this was a book that you introduced or, suggested or whatever.
Yeah, so I had my eye on this one because this came out last year.
Because of the book or the author or both?
The book.
Okay.
The way that the title first intrigued me because I was like, ooh, maybe it's sci-fi horror, which I guess in a sense it kind of is a little bit. Not really, but a little bit. So. No, but I mean.
Okay.
It's like, what then, cosmic-y? What the hell are the worms then?
I don't know.
Well, regardless,
okay. Yeah.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But
I guess, it's got a dash of cosmic horror.
Yeah, okay.
For sure.
So the title was like, oh, if you're not meant to be human, what are you meant to be then? So
and there's worms crawling through all the letters. It's cool.
Yeah, well, when this first came on my radar, it wasn't published yet. So it was just the title. So.
Okay. Did you see it like on a list of stuff coming out?
Yeah, when we were looking at our schedule for this year, it came up on a list. And I think originally I did not put it on. I had put on another book, which I had started reading, and I decided that I didn't think it was going to be a book that I wanted to do on the podcast. So,
do you remember the name of it, or do you want to keep that a secret?
Yes, but I'm not going to say because just
fair enough.
I don't know. It's not that it was a bad book; it just wasn't speaking to me, and I don't know if it was me or the book, but I don't want to say I don't like this book unless it's Frankenstein. So
fair enough.
But anyway, so we did a little rearranging. It worked out really well because we wanted to adjust our schedule in April. So I was like, hey, while we're doing that, let's switch this one in. I heard really good things about it and about the author. So I was like, ooh, let's definitely do it. So
cool. Let's use that as a segue to talk about the author. Andrew Joseph White is the trans, autistic, and New York Times bestselling author of Hell Followed With Us, The Spirit Bears Its Teeth, and Compound Fracture. Born and raised in the Shenandoah Valley, he received his MFA in creative writing from George Mason University and lives in Virginia with his wife and their antisocial cat. One of the interesting things about this book is at the end of it, he talks a little bit about not so much transition, but the fact that these were, in terms of being transitioning and their autism, it sounds like these were things that happened later in life and was pretty confusing for him, right? Because he had, I guess, I don't know, the general population understanding of how transitioning and autism work were different than his experience. For example, it wasn't like he knew as a young child that, I'm trapped in a girl's body. Or in terms of the autism, he didn't find out about it until later in life. Funnily enough, through doing research on a character for one of their books. I forgot which one it was, but he did say that he was doing research, and I think a friend or somebody was like, yeah, you have a lot of these qualities. And somehow that led to him finding out that he was autistic as well. So it's just fascinating, right? Because even somebody who goes through these things, there's no single story for everybody. And it's fascinating because you have to think about, I don't know, I imagine they have the general population information too, right? Like the mainstream information of like, here's what somebody who is going to transition, what their life should be like. Like they should know from a young age, right? So just, that's all. It was just fascinating that it happened later in life. And it's great that he found his path.
I feel like that a lot of people find out that they have ADHD in the same way.
Yeah, I have an interesting story about that.
Oh,
too.
I do that. Oh, I have that. Oh, I have that. Well, I feel like what happens is that people, especially with autism, right, is like you don't necessarily, depending on your type of autism, you don't necessarily pick up on like quote unquote normal social cues. So, for instance, sarcasm is like really hard to understand. You need to be direct. And when you don't get those kind of subtle hints, there's that lack of directness, which is a lot of gender fluidity is like, well, I'm not quite this, I'm not quite right. Like, it's not necessarily a direct thing. I can see where that would make it more difficult. So the combination is like, has to be, I don't know if he would consider it frustrating, but I could see where if it was me, I'd be frustrated. Like, what am I supposed to feel?
Well, because you look for
How would
models,
I feel like that
right?
anyway? Yeah, exactly.
It's one of those things where I'm making this up, but I can imagine they, maybe as a teenager he was, or I don't know when he transitioned, but was probably feeling those confused thoughts, right? And they said,
as we all are, right?
Yeah.
Teenager, oh my God, who isn't?
And he said it dawned on him as he was getting older that he was jealous of trans men in terms of, hey, that person seems to be living a life that's more what I think might work for me.
More authentic.
Yeah. So it's just cool to see how people live their lives, basically.
But I'm really glad to hear that he does not really feel the same way as Crane does in our book, because this book was really fucked up.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, but goddamn if it was not a bleak picture. And before we get into the book, I just want to say that we have already talked about this and we have to be full of spoilers. I spent a lot of the time reading this book waiting for the end to be able to form my opinion on it. So with that being said, if you don't want spoilers, you just have to read it. You can't skip stuff around in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. Every book is funneling toward its end, but this is so much of it is what is going to happen.
It felt like we were being held in suspense, just waiting to see, like, okay, which way is this going to go? And I think that's great writing. And I think that that does happen with other books, but there are other elements to other books that we can talk about in different ways. I don't know. Just this one feels very like we have to talk about the end. So let's start the end. No.
Let's start with the beginning. Let's go with the summary. I'll hand it over to you.
Festering masses of worms and flies have taken root in dark corners across Appalachia. In exchange for unwavering loyalty and fresh corpses, these hives offer a few struggling humans salvation. A fresh start. It's an offer that none refuse. Crane is grateful. Among his hive's followers, he has found a chance to transition, to never speak again, to live a life that won't destroy him. He even met Levi, a handsome ex-Marine and brutal killer who treats him like a real man, mostly. But when Levi gets Crane pregnant and the hive demands the child's birth, no matter the cost, Crane's desperation to make it stop will drive the community that saved him into a devastating spiral that can only end in blood. You Weren't Meant to Be Human is deeply personal horror, a visceral statement about the lives of marginalized people in a hostile world.
Yep, that's true. That's definitely it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Crane right away, our main character, because describe. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry,
before we get into the story, just so like I said, this is a very bleak story, but that doesn't mean that people who live marginalized lives live in a bleak world. This is just, it's horror, so it's going to be dark and bring out the awful aspects of things. But I feel like it should be a little caveat that like, this is a horror book. This isn't real life. So
there is a trigger warning right in the beginning. It's quite extensive. I'll even look at it right here because this is something that you've talked about and I don't see very often. The book was published in 2025, so it's very modern.
But that doesn't necessarily mean that they would have trigger warnings.
True.
Sometimes they're in the back. Sometimes they're in like the copyright front matter. Sometimes they have their own page. Like this has its own dedicated first page. There's a lot of different ways that you can see trigger warnings, but this one is definitely in your face. And I think for this book that works.
Yeah, there's an author's note right up front. In addition to a graphic focus on pregnancy, miscarriage, abortion, and childbirth, You Weren't Meant to Be Human contains explicit depictions of extreme violence and gore, suicidal ideation, intrusive thoughts, self-harm, sexual assault, and abuse, etc., etc. And then you can find more warnings on the author's website. And what's interesting about this is that it both feels like something that you would see in a book published in 2025. Not because all books would have this, but it is. Trigger warnings are a relatively new phenomenon, I think. Also, I wonder if it has to do with the fact that Andrew Joseph White is part of a marginalized community, and people in that community may have been more exposed to these negative experiences, right? Am I reaching there?
I think there's two. So I see it as two things. First of all, it's what the book is discussing, right? So if this was just horror porn, for instance, you wouldn't get that because the point is to startle you and make you feel uncomfortable. And this book manages to make you feel uncomfortable, but the point isn't to catch you off guard. And in the same way, right? It's not like idolizing that ability. It's discussing what's going on with this person. I don't know if that makes sense.
What you're trying to say is that there are shocking things happening in here and violent things, but it doesn't feel like it was written to shock and disgust. That's not the main point.
Right. And I think having the trigger warning is in part saying that, right? Like, these things are here, warning. So when you read this, be aware, but also know that this is like has to be part of the conversation.
I also wonder from the publisher's point of view how much a list of trigger warnings could also be seen as a selling point, right?
Yeah, but
like,
it can
this book
also
has
push
all
people
these fucked up things in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think that by doing that, it wouldn't necessarily draw on the people who are like, yeah, I like that kind of shit.
True. Yeah.
Because
it's not really the point of the book.
Yeah, because of the way that it's being presented, it's not like we're in on the same secret kind of thing. Like, I don't know how to put words to it, I guess, but it just feels like it creates a different vibe.
Yeah.
It's and I think also to your second point, yes, generally you'll see more of these kinds of problems or triggers in marginalized communities, women being one of them because women can get pregnant. So,
right.
There's, and like, especially like through rape and stuff that can get really touchy. And of course, like trans men have to deal with this as Crane does. But again, those are both technically marginalized communities. So, it's a respect thing, I find, in this instance.
It feels like
and I think maybe that's what I'm trying to say. By doing this, it's respecting the people that are being discussed and maybe affected by this. I was definitely affected by a lot of the pregnancy talk.
And you might bring in people who aren't even necessarily horror fans, right? I could imagine just people who are transgender or thinking about it might look up contemporary trans authors.
Hopefully not this book, though. This is, I don't know.
That would be really intense.
Yeah, that's, I don't know. But, I'm sure there's a lot more. Like, Gender Queer is a great graphic novel that's probably much more positive outlook on dealing with. But honestly, there's a lot of honesty in this, too, right? Like, at certain points in the book, he's called a girl by people outside, and it really affects him, and it's like shocking to him and frustrating. So there's those realistic scenarios. He also talks about his past self, which we had a conversation about this, and I had said that he uses his dead name. And I looked back, and I don't think he actually calls it that in the book.
No.
But then Andrew Joseph White does mention it in his afterword. He does mention his dead name. So I might have read that first and then decided that was in the book. But
yeah, let's go into Crane.
Yeah, let's get into it.
So the way that the book is written, there are chapters where current day Crane is a trans man. But there will occasionally be chapters where they go back and talk about their pre-transition as the character Sophie. So I think we'll just go ahead and follow the book there, right? And we'll talk about Crane and Sophie.
Sophie is almost like her own character. So yeah, it's not like we're disrespecting Crane by using Sophie, because he says Sophie all the time. Yeah.
And essentially Sophie was awfully uncomfortable in their own skin.
She was miserable, yeah.
Yeah, and she wanted to self-immolate and destroy her features so that nobody could recognize them at all.
Nobody could call her a pretty girl anymore.
Yeah.
She was not a girl.
Yeah, and this is a theme that continues through Crane this idea of self-mutilation and changing your body so much that nobody could possibly make a mistake about him being a woman or having been a woman or anything, right?
Yeah.
And Crane is covered in tattoos and just has changed their body completely.
So Crane is our main character, really, but it's the story reads in third person and it's in present tense, which to me made it feel very, and it's very close to Crane. It's a closed off narrator, can only really see from Crane's perspective. So that was an interesting choice because for me it really made the narrator feel like it was Crane, but it also wasn't.
And what's fascinating is he's mute by choice. So we have a main character who does not speak.
Yes, which adds to feeling like the narrator is, in a sense, speaking for Crane. And I guess for me, I wanted the narrator to be spoken by Crane since he's our main character and being mute. And also, one of the things that really drew me to that conclusion or sense of confusion is that Crane will make facial expressions or he'll react to something with a grunt, and the narrator then translates. Oh, well, he's saying this or he's doing, this is what his intent is. And it's like, okay, well, if you're the narrator in a third person, it's really a fascinating concept to think of. The narrator is explaining to us what Crane is thinking, even though it's not Crane. So, and you do see that, but not such a stark sense of it, since the narrator is our only way to communicate with Crane.
Yeah.
And on occasion, he uses like a text to speech app, but overall, we rely on the narrator. It's crazy. It's
it was
cool
fascinating
concept.
how it's very close to third person, but it's not necessarily in Crane's head. The narrator is definitely a separate entity.
It's almost like a translator. Like he has a translator who, is interpreting his sounds and just like a parent understands their baby, right? When they start crying, eventually you're like, oh, that baby's hungry, or oh, that baby just pooped himself. But you don't understand other babies. It's like this weird. So it's like the narrator is almost like Crane's parent.
Interesting. And so we start out with Crane. We get a little bit of the backstory of how prior to their transition, they were miserable. They wanted to self-immolate. They just wanted their life to be totally different. And so then what happens to how do we get to Crane where they are now in the beginning of the story?
Well, it starts with him and Levi getting it on.
Yeah, you said the story started with a bang, and I wasn't thinking of that kind of bang.
Yeah, and it's a lot of banging, and it's intense and graphic. But we're not really told specifically how he joins the hive, is what they're called. But what we do learn is that people who are in really, really horrible situations are given this option to join the hive. And then they're like, once they're in, and they get like injected with a worm, I guess, like a small one. And that makes
they don't get injected. These worms have teeth, so they get bit on the wrist.
Is that what it was? I thought they like cut it open. It open and then like inserted it.
I think it's a bite.
Maybe the worm did it themselves. Ugh, it's so creepy.
Yeah.
But that gives anyone who's part of the hive the ability to communicate with the worms, or the worms to communicate with them, I should say. And it's like a telepathic thing. And so I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we get a direct reasoning of why Crane went there. I think he was really miserable in his life. He talks a little bit sometimes about his parents and how he doesn't want, he went missing. They don't know what happened to him. He doesn't feel comfortable reaching out to them because they know him as Sophie, and he wants to keep that image intact with his parents because he says they were really good parents. They were really caring. They would support him, but that's not who he is. So he has separated himself from that. But we do get an idea with Jess, who is a girl who shows up, and she shows up on the door one day, and Crane has to go with her to kill her boyfriend, who she injured and ran away from, and came to the hive. And they're like, oh, you come be one of us and we'll take care of your boyfriend, which means they're going to kill him and do what with him?
Feed him to the worms.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Oh, I got it right.
Yeah. So it's like a win-win, right? She gets out of, and we later find out that Jess was locked in a room. She was just like, her boyfriend kept her, quote unquote boyfriend, kept her in a locked room. So I don't know if I'd call him her boyfriend, more like captor. So she's in this desperate situation that she needs to get out of, and the hive helps her. So we get that from her. It's also not really clear with Levi and Tammy and the other characters why they're in the hive.
You just know they've escaped some terrible background, and the hive gave them escape from that.
But then it turns out the hive isn't really all it sounds pretty horrible. They live in like squalor. Everything's gross. It's not a positive experience. Like you're at the lowest of your low, and then they help you and you feel like you're in a sense part of a community. But
it seems like it's a community where people don't really like each other.
No, and they're still miserable. Yeah. So it's not really a step up. It's maybe a step out.
So there are hives around the country. The book focuses.
I feel like it's in the region though, like because Crane.
Yeah.
I feel like
this
he
is in West
specifically
Virginia, by the way.
I think just West Virginia area, and maybe a little bit further than that. I think they have far reach, but I think they're in this area.
Yeah, and so this hive where Crane and Levi and Jess and some of the other characters hang out is a gas station, and the hive is just in one of the rooms of the gas station,
basement-ish.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a basement. I felt like it was just like, here's a storage room. Let's put the flies and worms in here, or something like that.
And they like live in these hard little shells, right? And they like come out, and it's really creepy.
It sounds like how coral reefs are made, right? They talk about how they like calcify a nest that they live in.
Oh, yeah, okay. So
that's what I get for reading a science book. I know stuff now.
An above ground coral reef
of worms and flies.
And the worms control the flies. It's like their eyes, right? Like they can.
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So things will happen. For example, Crane will go into the room. It'll be like the fly worm things want to talk to you, and Crane will go in there. And even as a mute, it doesn't matter because it's a psychic conversation.
Yeah, so he can actually talk. They're like the only ones he can talk to, right?
Yeah.
I didn't even really think of that either. Oh, fascinating.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating about Crane, too, is they have some guilt here because, for example, we just talked about Jess, and he's like, Jess left an abusive boyfriend, and we get hints that the other characters left terrible backgrounds where Crane has this deep guilt because their parents loved them, and nothing terrible happened to them except for the fact that they felt like they were in the wrong body and it was driving them crazy, right? So there's a little bit of like, oh, these people came from really harrowing situations and I'm just somebody who's uncomfortable in my body, and that makes a really interesting layer for that character.
Yeah, he also gets jealous of Jess because he thinks that Levi is attracted to her.
Yeah, Levi and Crane have this weird relationship where it's pretty abusive, but Crane likes that. Crane likes to just be felt like garbage and be treated like dirt. It gets them off.
Well, he sees it as being treated like a real man.
Yeah.
Right? Men take it rough.
And this is fascinating too because it goes back to in their prior life. He was Sophie, and she wanted to self-immolate. And you would think maybe that after the transition that would go away, but it has transformed and it's a different kind of self-mutilation.
Well, and he is trying. He's on T, and that helps. But once he gets pregnant, he's hiding his tea and he's worried that they're going to take it from him. He loses contact with his friends who I believe were getting him tea. So, and it's a slow process, right? Like the physical transformation, because I think he said he was on tea for like, I don't know, a couple months. It was not like years or anything. So, and it's a process. It's not like you take tea and then all of a sudden, oh, look at me, I have a full beard. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's it's like just going through puberty as a teen or a preteen. Like it takes time. So, but if you self-immolate, then it's instant. And then you're instantly not that person who you don't see yourself as anymore. And I think that's kind of the problem Crane has with.
Yeah.
Or Sophie more so than Crane, but.
Right. But then afterwards,
still lives in
Crane keeps that going, and it seems like the motive is different here. It's, treat me like a man, and probably ties into their guilt of having joined this hive from a loving family, right?
Well, and he really starts to think about the self-immolation stuff again, closer towards the end because he's being forced to be pregnant. He's forced into that reminder that his body is not what he wants it to be, and like that's a very being pregnant is a very stark reminder. And also, there's do you want to talk about the pregnancy?
I mean, that's really a huge turning point early in the book. That feels like
that's the
inciting incident
like that's,
right there.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So Levi and Crane have this weird, abusive, sexual, but also occasionally tender relationship. Like Levi shows Crane how to shoot a gun.
It's like a sadomasochist.
Yeah.
I wouldn't necessarily call it abusive because
right.
I feel like abuse is like
because Crane does consent to it.
Yes, and
good point.
They seem to be happy in this weird relationship,
and Crane specifically tells Levi by writing it down in a note early in their relationship, if you get me pregnant, I'll kill you.
Yes, and myself, happens? I think he says too, right?
Yeah.
So then he gets pregnant. He believes that he cannot get pregnant because he's on tea and he hasn't had his period in a long time. So therefore, that would indicate that he is unable. Apparently that was wrong.
And that's an interesting point too, right? Because again, the character is using information they've heard or rumors they've heard, because it's probably, especially in West Virginia, really difficult to be a trans person and go to a doctor and say, what do I need to know, right?
Well, it sounds like even just being in the hive and going to a doctor is pretty much not okay.
Right.
Yeah, and I guess that actually brings up another side point, is that everyone's okay with Crane being a trans man in their hive. So Levi's fine with it. He calls him a he. Tammy's fine with it. She calls him a he. They treat him the way that he wants to be treated. They don't...
At least from a gender perspective. Right. There's still a lot of jerkiness going around.
That's like, the hive mentality. But yes, so as far as Crane's trans portion of his personality, they respect that. So they all understand when he's pregnant, like how horrible it is for him. But they also have to do what the hive wants. And the hive says, we want this child. Therefore, everyone, without question, forces Crane to have this baby, because when the hive says something, it is law.
Yeah, and they put Crane on suicide watch. And so Levi and Crane are living in an apartment together, and Levi, hides the knives and the scissors and the razors and medicine. Anything that could be used for self-harm is hidden away.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can only imagine this is probably the worst fear of a lot of trans men. I would assume getting pregnant would have to be utterly horrifying, unless, of course, you make that choice.
I think it's a person's personal. I mean, because I think a lot of
maybe I should clarify.
Women also can have that fear.
I should clarify that I'm saying that because Crane specifically says, I'll kill you if you get me pregnant. So maybe,
I know.
So for trans men who do not want to become pregnant, something like this has just got to be absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, for sure. I think that also could go for cis women, but especially because then you're adding a disassociative element to it, right? But yeah, it's regardless of the trans status of this person, it's horrifying to be forced to be pregnant and carry a thing that. So this is what I wanted to get to when I asked if we should switch over to the talking about pregnancy, is how Crane views the embryo as like a parasite inside of his body, eating him. He talks about all the things that are true in what is happening with a pregnant person's body. It's just the way that he phrases it is so negative and creepy. And for instance, the baby is eating him from the inside out and pushing stuff out of the way and
stealing nutrients.
Yeah, the way that he phrases everything is so negative. Whereas a lot of people, well, I don't know, but I guess I shouldn't generalize, but I know of at least one person who really enjoyed being pregnant. It was not me. I didn't hate it, but it wasn't like, oh my God, this is the best feeling. I don't understand that. But I do know someone who just absolutely thought it was a wonderful experience. And I think a lot of that comes from the optimism and the positivity of I'm creating life, and meanwhile I'm like, my fucking back hurts, man.
I feel sick and dizzy.
There's an elbow in my bladder. Come on. Yeah. So it's the glass half full, half empty perspective for sure. But also then to have the idea of this hive of worms and then calling this thing inside your body a parasite, I just kept thinking of worms in a body, and then Stagger comes along.
Yeah, let's talk about Stagger. So
Stagger is my favorite.
Stagger's great. Stagger is who should have been the boyfriend. I don't know. Well, okay. Leading up to Stagger, Crane goes to see his friends Birdie and Aspen, and they are both also trans. I
think one is. I thought one of them was trans and one of them was non-binary, but I can't remember.
They've been friends. They've known each other at least through high school, if not beyond then. Essentially, they're the closest friends that Crane has. So Crane,
who are not in the hive, they're Crane's only friends, and he actually has to hide this relationship because once you're in the hive, you should have no contact with the outside world.
Yeah. So he goes and just visits them and spends the night just like, hey, I need some friends. A lot of bad shit's going on. And then
he finds out he finds out he's pregnant, and he goes to them and he's like, help.
Yeah. And then in the middle of the night, or I think very early the next day or something, while Birdie and Aspen are still sleeping, somebody breaks into the house and Crane sees them in the shadows, and it's just a man standing there with what looks like moving skin. And we find out that this is Stagger, and Stagger's actually a really good guy, but Stagger is full of worms right under the skin, pulsing around, and he's there to say, no, you don't get to see friends. And
yeah, he doesn't really talk though.
No,
right?
he doesn't talk.
He's like Crane, where he mostly just grunts, but he
talks a little bit.
He talks some. He does translate for Crane. He does have enough wherewithal. They learn sign language together, I think. So at one point, Crane is able to sign to Stagger, and then Stagger translates. But he's not all there.
Yeah, Crane suspects, or at least the narrator suspects, that the worms inside of Stagger are possibly eating away at his brain. And so he's not a mute or anything by choice. It's by degradation of brain cells.
Yeah. But he's this big brute of a guy, and he shows up at Aspen and Birdie's house. And he basically just stands there, and Crane's like, okay, I'm coming with you. Like, please don't hurt them. And then eventually, Stagger is his bodyguard, basically.
Yeah, hangs around, bodyguard, and also extra suicide watch.
Yeah,
make sure nothing happens to the baby.
From self-harm, from just running away, anything. He's his watcher, basically. But he also then starts to be Crane's biggest supporter, right? Like, he holds the chair while Crane is going up into the air vent to hide his tea because he's worried that if anyone finds out, they might not let him have it anymore because it might hurt the baby. They don't know. So he's like, I have to have my tea. So he hides it all over the house, and Stagger helps him. And at first I was like, well, wait, wouldn't Stagger just tell everyone? But Stagger's like becomes his best friend. So I really like Stagger. What is it? A gentle giant?
Yeah. Gentle worm giant.
Worm-filled. Yeah. But yeah, so we find out that the worms like injected themselves into him and tried to use him as a surrogate, basically. But it didn't really work because his brain is coming apart.
Yeah, it's scrambled. But he has some autonomy. I think as long as he's within vicinity of Crane, making sure Crane's not getting hurt or hurting himself or the baby, then like we can be chill.
Yeah, or unless the worms give him a direct order. At one point, he's unable to help Crane in the way that he wants to because the worms say no, and he's like, sorry.
Yeah, and this helps too with Levi because as the book progresses, Levi becomes more violent, especially after the pregnancy, when there's also suspicions that Levi is impregnating other people in the hive.
Yeah. Which
infuriates Crane because Crane's like, hey, I don't want to be pregnant. How about you get...
why didn't you get someone else pregnant who could want this, Yeah, there's just so much to unpack. It's impossible in the amount of time that we have to go through all this because the story itself is worth talking about. And then there's like all the layers of pregnancy, the hive, marginalization, and dealing with like quote unquote outsiders who come in and make judgment calls and have to be dealt with. There's just so much. It's great. And yeah,
and
it read fast.
Yeah, it's a quick read. I think it's like 320 pages, but it's pretty quick. I think one of the most interesting things too is as Crane is pregnant and has the orders from the hive to remain pregnant, he's forced to be around the other people in the hive who they, sort of have a relationship with. But knowing that all these people are like, yeah, the hive told us you're going to have this baby, you're going to have this baby. So they're still helping Crane through the pregnancy and through some of the difficulties through that. But Crane has no choice.
Yeah, but this is also really interesting because this is how Crane starts to pull away from the hive. He starts to realize maybe this isn't what I want. This isn't where I want to be because everyone else is like, well, it's fine. Just have the baby and everything will be fine. And Crane's like, absolutely not. And that separates him from the hive. He gets so angry and he actually attacks the worms at one point, and realizes like they're so weak. Like I just step on them. It's not even that hard, but so they need these humans to, in a sense, protect them.
Which really seems like a huge metaphor for just general bigotry against trans people, right? It's like, well,
all people.
True, but I mean,
in this
within this
instance,
focal point, just the feeling like
it's an empty shell of, those people. It's a weakness. They usually hate themselves, and therefore have to put that on others.
We get another character who comes in later, Hana, who shows up and has a miscarriage. And so this is another character where Crane's like, well, you did have someone else. Why can't we get anybody else? But he starts to discover that people in his hive and from other areas are becoming pregnant, and that it possibly could be Levi, not just sleeping around with Crane, but trying to impregnate in terms of the hive wants a baby. But it's Crane's baby that comes to what's the word? Not fruition, full development,
full term.
Full. Crane's the one who has to go to full term, even though there are these other characters who could be going through this, and this causes a rift between Crane and Jess. Jess is the character that she is also impregnated, but she aborts the baby, or tries to, but just like seriously hurts herself. But Crane just can't stand Jess because Jess is a girly girl and new to the hive.
Yeah, and upspurring.
And Levi seems to be interested
Levi.
in Jess. Definitely gives Jess a lot of attention when she shows up. So Crane's like, what the hell's going on? But then they become, if not friends, Crane starts to detest Jess less and starts to see her plight in all of this. And so that was cool to see, people who are antagonistic against each other and then have that discovering that, oh, this person actually isn't my enemy.
Yeah, well, she goes from being a threat in a sense to Crane understanding that she is also a victim. She was a victim with her prior relationship where she was kept in a box, but then she comes here to the hive and Crane feels like she's a rival and she knows who she is. I think there's part of that too. There's a form of jealousy. And towards the end, Crane realizes that she is also stuck in this situation, that they're in it together, right?
Well, you can also say you have to be open to finding allies or friendships in unlikely places, perhaps.
And even though Crane likes his relationship with Levi or gets what he wants out of it, it's really an unhealthy relationship. And then eventually, once Crane gets pregnant, he realizes how absolutely unhealthy that situation is. And when Levi figures out about Birdie and Aspen, he makes Crane basically get them to fuck off. He's like, I'm either going to kill them or you need to get rid of them permanently. So he just is completely isolating Crane on so many levels. And then Crane finally sees who he is. And I just want to say this quote because it's just a really good description of Levi. And I felt this the whole book. And I'm like, yes, Crane, tell him off. Levi hands over the key to Aspen and Birdie's house. So I'm giving you a chance to fix the situation before I do. That was Levi speaking. This motherfucker, this awful, cruel, unfathomable monster of a man, Crane wishes he could have beaten him to death with that pipe months ago. It wouldn't have done anything about the pregnancy, but then Crane would have gotten to see Levi's face bashed in and bleeding out in the gravel, and it would have been beautiful.
Yeah, it's a weird relationship they have.
That's also like a very normalized description.
That's how you feel about me, is that what you're saying?
No.
It's a very normal feeling.
That's a lot of how things are described. It's just very bleak, very dark, very negative. This whole book reads in that voice for the most part. And it's intense, but it's also very good.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like being a contemporary book and being about a transgender character, which is something that we're talking about more and more in this day and age, both from positive and negative perspectives.
Yeah.
It's tricky because I want to read this book and it's hard not to think of the metaphors of the book or how this trans character is being represented as a trans character, right? That you, what I'm trying to say is I put all of my contemporary questions on the book, where you also need to just accept the book for what it is. You don't have to think, oh, because it's written by someone from a marginalized community about a main character who's from a marginalized community, that does not mean that this is some kind of manifesto or depiction of everyone within that community, right? And I think it can be, when you engage with something from a different voice than you're used to engaging with, it can kind of, that thinking can slip in and be like, oh, this is a book about a trans person. I wonder how they see themselves or something. This would not be that book.
But that's also the beauty of reading.
Yeah.
And why it's so important not to ban books and to show different voices and different perspectives, because it gives you a safe space to think about things like that, right? Where you can put all your contemporary thoughts on this character, but it's doing no harm because it's a character. You're able to explore those thoughts in whatever context, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be for this book, but it's a safe space to think about things and then maybe learn something new about yourself and about your community and the world. And hopefully it's a positive thing. But
yeah. And I want to quickly interject because you mentioned banned books. Two of Andrew Joseph White's books are on the ban list for like the DOJ, which sounds like a cool
Dude,
flex.
if he fucking lives in Kansas, he just got fucking banned. I mean,
yeah.
What the fuck?
I mean, it's frustrating, but at the same time, I'd be like, wow, if this administration said, I don't want you to engage with something that I created, I'd be like, hell yeah, that's a good place to be.
Yeah, at least I know I'm on the right side of history.
I got the right kind of enemies.
If they were promoting my work, I'd be scared.
And also this was the first book I read was a memoir that Laura Jane Grace wrote, Tranny, The Confessions of a Punk Rocker. I don't remember if it's called Confessions of a Punk Rocker. But that was the first book I read. This was the singer of Against Me who transitioned and wrote a memoir about it in, I don't know, 2016, I think. Did I get the name right?
Tranny, Confessions of Punk Rock's Most Infamous Anarchist Sellout.
Oh, there we go. That was close. In terms of my reading experience, I read that memoir, which is cool. You should check it out and listen Against Me. Laura Jane Grace is awesome. And then this book. And now I want to read some more, right?
You got to read Genderqueer.
Yeah?
It's so
Is
good.
that fiction or nonfiction?
It's a memoir. It's a graphic novel memoir. It's really easy to read. It's YA, I think. So
Okay.
it's probably on every banned list ever because
it makes you think.
It's a really positive book. And what's cool about it is that it's positive. You don't have to be genderqueer. You can be a cis person and still get a lot out of that book.
Oh yeah.
Especially as a parent, right? Because it's important that our kids also know, how to be a nice person. And how to know who you are, right? I think it's worth exploring it for everybody, who you are. And
you learn a lot more about yourself by reading about other perspectives too, right?
Thank you. Those are the words I was looking for.
Should we work up to the end of the book here? Because it really feels like we're introduced to Crane and the hive and their setup and relationships within the gas station. And then we get the pregnancy and he has to go full term through it. The book is actually, it's not chapters, but it's sections are first trimester, second trimester, third trimester, and then postpartum.
Yeah,
I believe.
Postpartum.
So there's no subtlety about it or intended. This is about the pregnancy. So let's talk about the end, shall we?
Yeah.
Everything works out fine, right?
Giving birth. It's easy as pie. Just push the baby out and la-da-da.
Yeah.
All done. No
Not
problem.
at a hospital. Not through the help of any doctors.
Nope. No sedatives, no nothing. Just push that baby out.
And one of the characters, or the character that is primarily helping Crane through the birth is Tammy, who's an older woman, 65 years old, and she's got bad knees. I have a note there.
Very important. I mean, honestly,
she's the one who actually gives Crane the pregnancy test. I wrote that. It wasn't Aspen and Birdie. Oh, she gets it from Crane. He gets it from Crane. And then, Crane gets it from Tammy. Like, Tammy shoves it in his chest until he takes it. And then he takes the test at his friend's house.
No, he takes the test and then he finds out he's pregnant, goes to his friend's house.
That's right. Okay.
Because he wants to get an abortion, and they were going to do it, but then Stacker came.
Got it.
So yeah, it's kind of funny that you say with the bad knees, because that actually would matter when you're helping birth because you're pretty low to the ground usually. So that would suck for Tammy, but you know what? You get what you deserve.
Yeah. And Crane is obviously not happy about this, having a lot of conflicted feelings.
Well, at this point, let's say he's probably happy because he's getting the fucking thing out of him.
That is a good point. But he's still very worried about what the hive wants, and like what the hive wants specifically from the baby, and then two, is this going to be a human baby or is it going to be a fly worm baby? They're not really sure until the baby comes out.
Yeah, and it's a true testament to biology when he has the baby and Tammy puts her, it's a baby girl, into his arms. And he instantly becomes protective of this baby. He's like, wait a minute. I can't leave this baby.
And it's a normal looking baby. There's no worms
not
crawling under the skin.
It's not a worm baby. But that's, that connection of creating this human connected him instantly to it.
And just visually
outside of his ability to try not to care, right?
Yeah. And instantly it's not just like, oh, this is my baby. That's part of it. But also, this baby has done nothing wrong. This baby's completely innocent.
Yeah.
Right?
This baby should not pay for my mistakes or society's mistakes,
And so it's really too bad that Crane has to give up his baby to the hive, and then the baby becomes a fly monster, right? Isn't that how it ended?
No, it's better than that.
So
I was shocked.
Crane is obviously in the room because Crane is the one giving birth. Tammy,
Crane just gets up and leaves. He's like, I'm out of here, man.
Tammy is helping out as the midwife. Jess is also there, right? Jess and Levi.
Well, so
maybe Jess comes in and
we
out.
got to backtrack. Okay. Jess is there before he has the baby, and when his contractions are getting really bad, he goes outside with Jess to have a cigarette because Tammy's like, whatever, give him whatever the fuck he wants. Like at this point, just he can have a cigarette. So he goes out to get fresh air, and Crane gives Jess Levi's keys because he's wearing Levi's jacket, and is just like, in his mute way, communicates, get out of here, just go
to California,
free
girl.
yourself. And she's like, yeah, I've always thought of going to California. And Crane's like, go, and he's like in the middle of having this horrible contraction. She's like, I can't leave you. He's like, get the fuck out of here. And then he goes inside and has the baby. So yes, Jess was there. She is no longer. She hopefully
also
escapes.
Oddly, his parents show up during that scene. That was a little weird.
I understand the symbolism there. So when he's outside with Jess, a car pulls up to the gas station, even though the gas station's technically closed, and they're like, we're almost out of gas, and it turns out to be his parents, which is very
who have not
convenient.
seen Crane as Crane. And so there's not instant recognition or anything.
Yeah, and he doesn't want them to know that it's him because he, like I had mentioned before, he wants to keep this image they have of Sophie in their minds. He's like, I don't want them to see what I've become, kind of thing, which again is like a really negative view. So that was a little too convenient, but I really understand like why it happened, because their instant acceptance of him for who he is, what's happening to him, and wanting to help him, it really helps push him to do what he does in the end, and to, in a sense, help him free himself from this really negative spiral that he's in.
Yeah. So we go back in, and the birth is completed. We've got...
Oh, yeah. So Jess helps convince his parents to leave, and she's like, oh, yeah, we're on our way to the hospital, but his boyfriend's really dangerous. Give me his phone number, or give me your phone number, and he'll call you when he can. And they are so willing to be there for him. They'll do whatever. And they're like, okay. So then they leave. So it's not like his parents are outside while he's inside giving birth.
Yeah.
They're not just like hanging out waiting.
They're just like, we'll call you.
Yeah. So anyway, now we're inside.
All right. We've got Crane holding the baby.
The baby is out. The baby is not a worm baby.
And what happens?
Well, Crane has a long conversation with himself in his head about how this child is innocent, and considers his possibilities. He's like, well, I can try to kill everyone here and run away with the baby, but the worms will follow us no matter to the ends of the earth, because they're so determined. And he figures out that these worms want to go into this baby and try and control it, like they failed with Stagger. But then right at the end here, while Crane's giving birth, he realizes that they have successfully, at least so far, have been able to inject themselves into Levi. So it seems like they're trying to just get into these people's bodies. And
it has a cool reasoning too. The idea is that because they're stuck in, like the storage closet in the dark, in the sun. Yeah, they can't go outside.
Not thoroughly explained, but they are stuck inside.
Yeah. So the implication is that the worms are going into the humans in order to essentially be able to move around more and have more range than being stuck in their calcified cocoon in dark places.
So this person who just spent like what 30 something weeks pregnant with a thing that he considered a parasite is now supposed to give this baby to them so that they can put parasites in it, which is against everything that Crane just had to go through, right? Like, but in a more literal sense, not like the baby is symbolized as a parasite, but like literally
actual parasites, worms
floating around under your skin. It's
so like creepy. The Ruins. I think that was the
like
movie with
worms
under people's skin.
Oh God, so gross. I am not okay with that. But yeah, you say what happens.
Oh, okay.
What he does. What does he do?
Well, so
what's his decision?
His decision is keep the baby. No. Give the baby up. No. Kill everybody in the room? No. Eat the baby? Yes. So Crane just takes a big fucking bite out of this baby's neck
and swallows it.
Forces himself to swallow it, even though it's disgusting.
Blood everywhere. Tammy's screaming. Everyone's in shock. No one expected that. I don't even think Crane expected that. But that was the only way he believed that he could save this baby was by killing it.
And then Stagger just
That's how desperate it was.
Runs into Levi because Levi's got his shotgun here and fires off a wild shot, killing Tammy.
Yeah. Well, I told you she gets what she deserves. And then also shoots Stagger.
Yeah, like disintegrates his shoulder or something.
Yeah. Oh, man. It's a fucking bloodbath.
And then Levi gets horribly injured by Stagger.
His head gets bashed into the wall to the point of he's talking gibberish and mush brain, not from the worms.
And so Crane at first goes to finish off Levi with the shotgun, but it's jammed. It's not working out, so he ends up like, fuck it. Goes back and gets the hammer that he used to kill Jess's boyfriend in the beginning of the book.
Levi's
in
like,
a very
you
similar
won't do
fashion.
It. And I'm like, Levi, you know he can do it. He did it to other people. Why do you think, like, I'm guessing Levi thought because they had a relationship that he didn't think Crane would do it? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, dude, you're an idiot. If he just ate his fucking baby and you don't think he's going to take a hammer to your head?
Yeah, this dude is...
He clearly got hit over the head.
But he gets hit in the scar on his stomach where the worms had burrowed into his body. Crane just like takes the claw into the hammer and just rips into his scar and kills him. And everybody's dead. And then Crane goes away without the baby, or maybe with the baby. It's not a live baby. I don't remember.
Is it a baby anymore?
Is he carrying it around?
Point? Oh my God. No.
And then in like 2 seconds, it's like, then he kills the flies and the worms, which I feel like you would need a flamethrower or something.
He said how easy it was to kill. My guess is that killing
I think that's the
worms,
big metaphor there.
Yeah. I think killing the worms in turn like made it so the flies would die. I don't think he had to like individually squish each fly.
But I feel like if you're like, oh, it was really easy to kill them, maybe I shouldn't have eaten my baby. But they didn't know at that point.
Well, I think that was part of his desperation, right? There was no hope. And I think he probably expected to die after that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I know it's like, man, try a little bit. But the problem too is as soon as he put that baby down, then he lost any kind of control.
And what's terrifying about it too is the reason the parents were introduced toward the end is there's like, I guess, I don't know if you'd call it hope, but there's some idea of, well, I can go back to my parents. But what are you going to say? I ate my baby. Do you still love me?
He can't say anything, man.
Oh, right. Well, he can, but he chooses not to. And he's definitely not going to talk about that.
Well, he struggled at the end. He was trying to say stuff and like couldn't. And he does like whisper one
Yeah, it was interesting. I
goodbye
was
to
really
them.
curious because of the whole chosen mute angle if at the end there'd be some guttural scream or something. But what's much more realistic is that they do try to speak in a moment of crisis, but it's been so long since they've talked, it's just kind of like,
He's like, he does like croak whisper goodbye to his parents.
yeah.
So there's that. But yeah, it's, oh man. And it's hard too to like speak on that stuff, right? Like there's so much here that I do not relate to. So it's hard to be like, well, why doesn't he just say something? Or like to really understand, right? Of
What you mean?
what
Why
it,
doesn't Crane try different options before the baby eating?
well, yeah, like when he's trying to, when he's so desperate to talk and he can, it's easy to just say, well, you can, so just talk, right? But not really understanding the depth of that.
Yeah, and it's such a huge part of their
'Cause-
identity now.
Well, because you said like he chose not to talk, and it's like yes, but I think it, in a sense, can be considered to be deeper than that. Like I can choose not to talk right now, but it's not the same thing, right? It's a completely different. This is more of a
It's almost like a resistance against participation in a sense.
yeah, but then it just becomes so intense. Yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, we didn't offend anyone on this one.
Well, I mean,
There's a lot of mine shells around here, but I think it's, you know, and I think
it's good to talk about
it's good
things
to talk
that
about
are
things, yeah, and
different than your regular
think,
day to day.
you know, just know we're not here to actively offend anyone unless you're a Trump supporter, but unless you approve of book bans, but you know, I think it's okay to try, and sometimes you stumble as long as you're doing it in a positive way, right? And you learn from your mistake. So if we have offended anyone with anything we've said, more so than, you know, we normally do, these are topics that, you know.
I feel like we offend ourselves more than anything.
Yeah, I know. Well, I worry about that, right? Like I'm talking about stuff that I have no personal experience in, besides the pregnancy thing.
Yeah.
So who am I to make judgment calls or try to decide what characters are thinking? But that's part of reading a book, right? You can see that with anyone. It just feels a little more sensitive, especially in today's environment with so much negativity around the world, that it's a good thing to talk about. And I think it's better to talk and make a mistake than to be silent talking about these things.
Yeah, definitely.
And I don't want fucking worms under my skin. God damn it.
Oh God, no.
Oh,
I also don't
God.
want to eat a baby.
Do you want to be pregnant?
No, I mean I've had a cold before, so I get it.
Oh, you stereotypical man.
All right. So, what did you think about the book overall? What were some of the impressions or takeaways you had?
The process of reading this book, I was a bit confused with the worms. I feel like we never really got a clear idea of where they came from and stuff, but at least we learned that the people in the story also didn't know that. So, kind of a unknown factor, but it was a lot of wondering what was going to happen up until the end. And I felt like I was withholding my judgment of the book until we saw, first of all, is Crane going to have the baby? Then what, you know, and all these things. So I felt like I read a lot of this book in a suspended moment of not really sure how I felt about it. I definitely enjoyed the writing style. I think that the present tense close third person kind of screwed with my head, though. I kept thinking that Crane was our narrator, and it wasn't necessarily true. But the close narration like that, I don't know, especially with a mute character, made it different in a fun way. I did enjoy that. And it was very bleak. I liked that as well. Yeah, overall, I really liked it. I didn't like thinking about some of the stuff that I happily forgot about with
from
pregnancy.
being pregnant?
Yeah. I was, as I had mentioned earlier, I didn't love it. I was happy to get my parasite out, and now he's a growing parasite. No, he's not a parasite.
I think of him as
all.
a barnacle more than a parasite.
Yeah, no, I love our kid very, very much. I'm very happy with him. But yeah, like the process of pregnancy, can be very uncomfortable on many different levels. And I think this book did a very good job of exploring that as well as all the other factors. There's a lot going on. There's a lot to process, a lot to focus on. It was very good, but it was a lot, I guess, is how I would put that. My ramble on. So your turn to ramble. Okay. What did you think?
Yeah, I also liked it. I have different views on this. So I'll start with...
Wait, what? You don't remember being pregnant? Well, enjoy that part?
I told you I had a cold. I might even have a little bit of a cold right now. So
great.
I'm basically in my third trimester. When is it the worst?
It's either the end of the third or the beginning of the first. No, it's the end of the third. I mean, contractions are fucking nightmare.
Okay. We'll see how bad this
It's like when you run and get a cramp.
Yeah, I've gotten a cramp before.
It's paralyzing.
I understand you. Okay. Enough of that nonsense. I liked it. It gave me a lot to think about in terms of just having a main character who is so different than any other main characters I've read. And it's also cool that the author is also transgender and autistic, even though like these characters seem
I would hope
the author is not the character, is not Crane, which is good for them because Crane's got it bad. Yeah, just having that exposure was really interesting. I agree too. I never really understood what the worms and flies were giving people. I mean, so it got Jess out of her situation with the abusive boyfriend, and with Crane, it seems like, well, when he has conversations with the hive recognizes them and isn't bigoted against them. So in Crane's situation, that might just be enough. But I don't know. If it felt like there wasn't quite enough information, and it didn't feel like it was being purposely hidden. It just felt a little undercooked. I felt like it was too obviously a metaphor a bit. But overall, I still liked it. I thought the prose was okay. It kind of reads young adult to me, except for all of the horrible things that happen.
Which is like 90% of the book.
Yeah, but I've talked about this before. Like the language it's fast reading. It's present tense, which feels very modern. And it made me think about, since we've started this podcast, a lot of the contemporary books that we've read that have been published in the last, 5 years or so have been present tense. And the thing about it works, but I think this would have been better as a movie. I think you could have some gnarly visuals in here. It would be a very disturbing movie. But the thing about it,
body horror.
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, it would be crazy. It was like there's all this crazy shit happening, but still the prose and the way it's written feels pretty conventional and a little light on detail. And sometimes that works. It's kind of cool that you don't get all the information, right? Because you're stuck with Crane so much and they don't have all the information. But it just felt a little too breezy reading. There are probably some people who read this and be like, how could you call this breezy? But I'm literally talking about just the pacing, the way that the information is given, and how it feels very much like a book that's written for a 2026 audience that has no attention. So it's like, put it in present tense and make it quick. You got to keep their attention before they open their phones, right? I'm not saying that's how it was written, but it feels like that. And I kind of struggle with books that don't use the book form to its fullest extent. It felt like it had the information that a movie would give you. I wanted a little more depth out of it, but I still really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I've said this before. I want crazy. When crazy shit happens, I want to see crazy twists to how that information is conveyed.
You are so always commenting on the prose. It's funny. Like I feel like we've reached this point where it's pretty clear that I think about themes and the storyline, and you think more about the prose and the style.
Yeah.
And not to say that the other things aren't important to the other person, but you will, not saying you don't like this book, but you will not like a book, or it will bother you if the prose isn't where you want it to be. And for me, it's like, if the story's boring, then I'm like, eh. And if the prose is really good, but the story isn't there for me, then I'm like, it's fine.
I'd say that's pretty accurate. And on that topic, the theme of this book and, your way of thinking of it is where this book really excels. There's just a lot to chew on. Oh, chew on like the baby. I didn't even plan that. It just happened.
And like gummy worms. We should have been eating gummy worms the whole time.
Oh, God. But yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. But I'd still recommend the book.
Yeah, within reason.
Right. I guess it depends who I'm talking to.
Yeah, because there's a lot going on in this book, and I think you have to be in the right mindset for it, right? For the horror aspects of it, especially because there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
But then also like what you were saying before too, like beware of not feeling that this is an insight on how, I guess some people live like this, I guess.
Yeah, this is not the book's fault at all, but it's one of those things where I could imagine someone reading this and being like, oh man, to be trans is awful and miserable. And don't take that away from it.
Yeah,
I mean, take away what you will, but keep that in mind that this is a horror book and it was horrifying.
I think the thing is like that plays into this story, sure, because of what is put on them, but the character is trans and then it's a horror book with a trans character.
Yeah.
And it plays into what would be horrifying for this person would be to get pregnant. So that, but you could also have it be a cis woman. It could be Jess dealing with the same thing. There would just be less layers involved.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about what we're reading. So why don't you tell me what you're reading? Oh my God. Do you actually have nothing or have you just not
put it in there?
Okay. That would be crazy if there was a week where you're like, nah, I haven't been reading.
There was actually. In, I think, January, I had only read, I think it was Fever House. I don't think I had read anything else.
Oh, wow.
No, I read one other book. I read Incidents Around the House by Josh Malerman, or I listened to it. That one was recommended to us from a friend, or I think a couple people might have mentioned this one to me. But yeah, it was interesting. The audiobook was it's a little kid who's not possessed, but haunted by like this other mother character who keeps wanting to get into her soul or body or what, like possess her. Talks a lot about reincarnation and stuff. But the narration was a woman who did like a little kid voice. So it was really high and talk like this. And for someone who gets sensitive with sounds, trying to read that in bed was a little jarring sometimes because I'm like, it's a little high-pitched squeaky voice when I'm trying to sleep isn't helpful.
Damn it, book, put me to sleep.
Yeah, right. Like, I want a lower level, please. I just spent my whole evening with my child with the, I don't need the child voice. It was okay, but I think it would have been better maybe if I read the book. But it was good. It was, your typical possession. Well, I keep saying possession, but like attempt at possession, and they try to escape, but it follows them around kind of thing. So it was good. Yeah, I enjoyed it. The ending had a cool twist. That was about it. That's it. That's all I read.
Wow.
I am reading things, but I've been slow. So what about you?
Well, I want you to love me more. So I'm reading a book about medieval Europe. That's not actually how it happened, but it's just a nice little extra. I did a thing that I tell myself I should do often, which is, hey, let's go to my bookshelf with all these books we own and browse and pick a book. And I did that, and I picked Medieval Europe from the breakup of the Western Roman Empire to the Reformation by Chris Wickham. And it's cool. It's a macro history from about 500 to 1500, I think is the general range of years. And one of the reasons I really like it is I just read 2 science books that were largely focused on evolution. And I kind of feel like reading a macro history feels like reading an evolutionary book, right? Because you have to cover sweeping changes in a shorter amount of time. And the reason you're going to love me more, for those who don't know, is that Amber loves middle-age history. Middle-age history? That makes it sound like you're reading about
myself.
Is it medieval history? I guess would be better.
Did you slip?
I should know this, but did you do medieval history in school? I mean, you did, but it's not like you're... Yeah,
that's what my BA is medieval.
Okay. Yeah, so as you can tell.
So it wasn't really like specifically medieval Europe. I have a history degree, but my focus was medieval history, and then modern Europe and the Near East.
Okay, cool.
Are my minor focuses.
Yeah, I just know you know a bunch about that kind of stuff in medieval.
I did.
Yeah. You still read
the
stuff?
The hard part about history is you read a book, you're like, yes, I know that. Oh, that's so interesting. Oh, and that connects to this and that. And then you put it down and 5 minutes later, you're like, oh, fuck, who was that? Which Henry? What year?
Oh, yeah.
So
we had this when I first picked up this book. I was reading the introduction where he's kind of laying the ground rules of, there's a lot of, it's tricky to do cover 1,000 years in a single volume, right? There's lots of pitfalls there, and you're kind of forced to generalize.
It's so hard not to go on tangents, right? Well, this leads to that, which leads to that, and then
But it's great because he's been very good about that, very straightforward, saying here are some of the difficulties and here are some of the pitfalls that historians can fall into when doing this sort of thing. But I was telling you about it. I was like, yeah, he's telling me how he's talking about how just because something happened, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to lead to the next thing. And
oh yeah, that was
you're like,
funny.
that's literally how history works.
What was it like? Just because the Holy Roman Empire fell doesn't lead to World War II or whatever. Yes. And I'm like, well, it actually did.
But when you read the nuance and then you try to speak it, and it just comes out like blah. Yeah. But
that is very history for you.
I did pick out a good medieval diss here as you were supplying us in the last couple of episodes when you were talking about your Dan Jones books that you were reading. So this was, I don't know, some court guy talking shit to another court guy, and he called him a destroyer of the administration and a predator of extraordinary cruelty, lying naked in a bedchamber covered in excrement.
Oh, I just love it.
Man, we lost that ability to diss like that.
Yeah, right now it would just be like, fuck you, man, you're a bitch.
Yeah, be like, wow. Which is also fun, but not nearly as creative.
No. So there's this guy I follow on Instagram, and he's amazing. He just does disses. And he's like, you could say, fuck you. And then he says, like, or in proper English, and then like high English, and then like Victorian English. And it's just like they get longer and more drawn out like this, and just more like artful and tasteful. So good. So funny. I love a good
medieval
long drawn out insult.
And that's all I've been. It's pretty dense. The book looks like it's 400 pages, but there's so many goddamn notes in it. It stops at like a 250 pages.
Well, and you're reading that now, so if you're talking about that, then I suppose I could talk about, because I want you to love me more too. So I'm reading.
Does this mean we love each other, or we're both like nervous?
Yeah, I don't know. But I'm reading about Roman. Well, not really history, but I'm reading about the Romans.
What's the book? Because there's a lot of books.
Memento Mori, What the Romans Can Tell Us About Old Age and Death by Peter Jones. It's not like a history or anything, but this guy is looking at how the Romans looked at death and whether, like, what they thought about old people. And I don't know, I'm not very far into it, but I said this one little bit to Dan earlier, and it was really funny. And it's about how Aristotle apparently felt about old people. As the man who invented biology, Aristotle was always asking the questions: why does this animal behave as it does? What is this bit of the body actually for? Why is it in that location? Why does it look like that? And so on. In other words, he had a strong sense of function. That obviously raised the questions. What are the old good for? What function do they fulfill? Aristotle, it seems, could find no answer. Yeah, it's pretty funny. So I got this a while ago, and I just felt like now that I've hit middle age, I need to learn about death. I need to read about death and what I'm in for. Because according to this book, as far as I've gotten, I'm in the perfect. We're middle age is like where you want to be. Youth, you're too crazy. Clearly, when you're old, you're useless, according to Aristotle. So we're in their golden age right here.
Yeah, better take advantage of it by
reading more.
Sitting down and reading more. All right, let's talk about what's coming up next. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited.
So we got The Watchers by A.M. Shine, which is an Irish horror book, and it will be coming out very close to St. Patrick's Day. You probably know.
It is on St. Patrick's Day.
It's coming out on St. Patrick's Day?
St. Patrick's Day is a Tuesday this year, yes.
We must please record it before St. Patrick's Day unless we want to get
Dear Lord,
hell.
If we record it on St. Patrick's Day, I'm going to be fucking pissed because I'm also going to have to edit it and we have to post it.
And we have whiskey to drink.
Oh, man.
And music to listen to.
Yeah.
So we got The Watchers coming up next, and then we have another themed month. We had the month of Rawson in January. Check out those episodes. That was Fever House and Devil by Name. And then in April, we are doing the month of Psycho. We're jamming three books into one month.
You keep saying that. We're not really. Like,
kind of.
It is every other week. It's like our normal.
Oh, okay. Cadence?
Yeah. It's nothing. So with the month of Rawson, we had 2 weeks that we posted and we had a 2-part series. So that made sense. The month of Psycho, we have 3 weeks. The way that I was able to make it work is that we're actually posting our first book, Victorian Psycho, on Wednesday instead of Tuesday. And that is April 1st. So therefore, we will have 3 books in 1 month. We would still have 3 books. It would just be the day before. So it's not...
Okay, that doesn't feel quite as crazy.
It's still crazy, though.
But American Psycho is
psychos at the end of this.
Big looking book. So.
And it's going to be real interesting. I've heard a lot of not very good things about the author. So
interesting. I'll give you a quick anecdote, not about the author, but about the book American Psycho. We were playing this game over Christmas. I forgot the name of it. It was pretty clever though, where everybody grabs a book, and then I don't know. The game will say
so it's someone's turn, and they have to ask a question, and then everybody opens the book that they have, and then finds the best quote to answer that question or go with the theme or whatever.
Yeah.
So it can be funny, it can be serious, whatever.
Yeah, and then once somebody finds the passage they want to read, you set a timer. So it's kind of like quick skim through this book and find a thematic response. And our friend John picked American Psycho, and he was flipping through it for about 30 seconds. And then he's like, I'm going to go put this book back because the 2 or 3 places where I randomly opened it up had horribly offensive stuff in there.
Yeah, and it would have been fine except that
parents were in the room.
Yeah, my parents and in-laws were all in the room. So I was like, It
could have potentially been awkward, but it's funny because I was like, John, just stick with the book.
Could have been funny, but it definitely would have been jaw-dropping for a few people in the room.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that game was, in a sense, like Cards Against Humanity with books without the, it'd be fun to do that with a group of people who wouldn't be easily offended.
Yeah.
And see what we come up with. Like, okay, let's get out some horror books and have fun with it. But yeah, so that's gonna be a read. I bet we're gonna have things to say about that.
Yeah, I bet. I'm gonna have to watch the movie again. I haven't seen it.
Oh, it's so good. The movie's great. Time ago. I just watched it this last spooky season. Huh. It's so good. I really like what's his face?
Christian Bale.
Yeah, especially in that movie.
Are you interested in The Bride of Frankenstein at all?
No.
Yeah, it looks fun. I don't know.
Wait. Oh, is that the one that's just called The Bride?
The Bride.
No, not really. I don't know.
I don't really like the Frankenstein design or the monster design.
It just seems like it's going off that Wuthering Heights, like weird epic romance gothic thing going on. I feel like it's all playing on Crimson Peak for some reason. But it's like
very colorful gothics.
Yeah.
Which makes sense for Del Toro's Frankenstein because of the Mexican background. But it's also like, when I see gothic, I want to see shadows everywhere.
Yeah, and melancholy. And these seem like high energy romance movies with a lot of drama. And I'm like, this is like Bridgerton meets Crimson Peak. And I'm like, that's not what I'm looking for in a movie. So, and I like both those things. I've actually watched some of Bridgerton and I enjoyed it. And I really like Crimson Peak, but it's like, it's thing. So I feel like we're getting this weird Universal Monsters revamp, but in a way that I'm not convinced. Well, we'll see when Dracula comes out, but I'm kind of worried now.
When's Dracula? Just a straight up Dracula movie?
Yeah. Who's doing it?
Scored by Danny Elfman.
Yeah, Danny Elfman's doing the music, and I don't know. I'm just worried it's just going to be all this weird. I feel like everything's getting too romantic. And
Nosferatu was great, which was romantic, but damn, that just the style was so good.
Yes, that is that's what I want to see. So then seeing, I think, Frankenstein next to that, it's like, ooh, that was very different. And I think Wuthering Heights, everything I've read and heard about it, it's not Wuthering Heights. It's
Wuthering Heights used as like a vehicle to tell a modern story kind of thing.
Yeah, and this bride is kind of looking like that to me. Yeah. So I don't know. We'll see.
Hopefully it's good though. Who knows?
I mean, I have less strong opinions about movies. I'm not as hyped as some people are all the time. I'm like, yeah, sure. If it's on one of the streaming platforms I have, and I'm looking for a movie and it looks okay, I'll watch it. And I'm okay with B stuff, and I'm okay with the big blockbusters, but I don't really get excited about movies. I was actually very excited about Nosferatu, but
yeah, and this year the Odyssey.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm looking forward to that.
The casting is weird. All these white Greeks.
Matt Damon as Odysseus.
Yeah,
not so sure. Who's playing Telemachus?
Spider-Man. Tom Holland.
Right.
Yeah, I know. But it's I just gonna have to just deal with it. Godzilla -0.
Oh, that I'm looking forward to for sure.
And then supposedly David Eggers, who directed Nosferatu, is coming out with a werewolf movie. So those are 3 movies that I'm definitely excited about. But this isn't a movie podcast, so you know what?
Is Ben Affleck in the Odyssey? I feel like he's gonna be.
Oh God,
he's gonna be like on the. Oh man. Yeah, I could just see him popping out of the Trojan horse, like, "Hey guys, God damn it,
I am Batman." Oh God.
Okay. Yes, This is not a movie podcast.
So, with that said, we'll see you next time for the Watchers. Thanks for listening.
Well, if you've made it this far, then we didn't scare you off. Thanks for listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction.
Please rate our podcast, and if you like, follow us on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Podcast, which is also our Gmail address. Tell us what you liked or didn't like about the show, and let us know if you have any book suggestions. See you next time. Bye.